Today, we're going to tackle something that can feel pretty daunting. What on earth do you do when you disagree with a decision from HMRC? We've teamed up with the experts at My Tax Accountant to give you a clear, step-by-step guide on how to challenge them, so you know exactly where you stand and what your rights are. All right, let's get right into it.
And it's so important to know, right from the start, that this isn't just theory. The team at My Tax Accountant, they're a top UK accounting firm, and they handle these kinds of challenges day in, day out. So everything you're about to hear is based on their real-world, frontline experience. You're in very good hands.
Just imagine this for a second. You're a freelance graphic designer based in London. You've had a really busy year. You filed your self-assessment, and you think you're all done. Then, a few weeks later, that brown envelope lands on the doormat. You know the one. It's from HMRC, and it says you've made a mistake, and now you owe a pretty big penalty. Your heart just sinks. It all feels so final, so official, so overwhelming. But, and this is what this whole guide is about, it is not the end of the story.
What if I told you that this number, 64%, what if I told you that represents your chance of success? It's a number that should honestly change the way you look at this entire situation. It should give you some real hope and a very, very good reason to fight a decision you think is wrong.
Yep, that's right. The latest data shows that a staggering 64% of HMRC's first decisions were either changed or just flat out canceled after an internal review. Just let that sink in. Nearly 2/3 of the time, a fresh pair of eyes at HMRC looked at a case and disagreed with their own colleague. This just proves that mistakes happen, and challenging them is absolutely not a waste of time. You have a very, very real chance of getting a completely different and better outcome.
So, to make sure you're totally prepared, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with why these disputes are even happening more and more. Then we'll get into your fundamental right to appeal, walk you through the two-stage process, look at your other options if things escalate, cover the nitty-gritty of deadlines and costs, and finally, talk about getting an expert in your corner. Okay, first up, let's get some context. Why does it feel like HMRC is getting, well, a bit more aggressive with its assessments lately? I promise it's not just in your head. There are some very real pressures going on behind the scenes. This huge number, £46.8 billion, is the UK's estimated tax gap for the 2025 to 2026 tax year. What's that? Well, it's the difference between the tax HMRC thinks it should be collecting and what it actually gets. And the government is putting a ton of pressure on them to close that gap. This means a more aggressive approach, and with thousands of new staff being hired, it also means more inexperienced caseworkers who, are just more likely to make mistakes. This is a huge reason why your appeal has such a good shot.
All right, now for the most important part of this whole conversation. Challenging an HMRC decision isn't just something you might be able to do. It is your fundamental legal right. See, this isn't just some company policy they can change. Your right to appeal is actually written into UK law, the Taxes Management Act of 1970, to be exact. This gives you the legal power to formally dispute decisions on everything from income tax and VAT to those annoying penalties. So the takeaway here is never, ever feel intimidated into just accepting a decision you know is wrong.
Okay, here's a quick pro tip for you. It's totally normal to feel overwhelmed when you get that letter. But the first step forward is literally right there in your hands. The very first thing you need to do is read that HMRC letter again, but this time, really slowly and carefully. Tucked away in all that official jargon, it will tell you exactly how to appeal and what the deadline is. That letter is your starting point.
So, you've made the decision. You're going to appeal. Great. What happens now? The whole process might seem complicated, but it really boils down to a clear, two-stage journey. Let's walk through it.
From a bird's-eye view, it looks like this. Step 1. You send your initial appeal directly to HMRC. Simple enough. Once you've done that, you get to Step 2, which is basically a fork in the road. You can either ask for an internal review inside HMRC, or you can take your case straight to the Independent Tax Tribunal. We're going to look at both, because picking the right path here is absolutely critical. But before we go any further, and please listen to this carefully, this part is non-negotiable. You usually have just 30 days from the date on that letter to get your appeal in. This is a hard deadline. As the experts say, a late response can be fatal. If you miss this window, you could lose your right to challenge the decision at all. So get that date circled on your calendar right now. Now let's circle back to that amazing 64% statistic. If you choose that internal review path,
Your case gets handed to a totally different officer, someone who had absolutely nothing to do with the original decision. And as you can see here, that fresh pair of eyes results in the decision being changed or canceled 64% of the time. It's a hugely effective step, often just because that second officer can look at it objectively and spot an obvious error.
But what happens if the internal review doesn't go your way? What if HMRC doubles down and upholds their decision? Don't give up. The journey isn't over yet. You've still got other, more formal options to escalate your case. That's not all. Here's where things can get a bit more serious.
Your two main options now are something called Alternative Dispute Resolution, or ADR, and the Tax Tribunal. Think of ADR as a kind of structured negotiation with a mediator. It's less formal, it's private, it's quicker, and it's great for disputes over facts, like if you disagree on what something's worth. The Tax Tribunal, on the other hand, well, that's basically a court. It's a formal, public hearing with a judge, and whatever they decide is legally binding. This is the path you take when you're arguing about a point of law, not just facts.
Okay, so we've covered the main process, but success often comes down to the details. Now let's get into the crucial rules of the road. Those deadlines, what counts as a good excuse if you're late, and the one question everyone asks, what's this going to cost me? Stay with me, because this next part might really surprise you.
So what if you missed that 30-day deadline? You might be able to get a late appeal accepted if you have a reasonable excuse. This table is super helpful because it shows you what HMRC will probably accept and what they'll almost certainly reject. A serious, unexpected event like a hospital stay or the death of a close family member, that might count. But saying you didn't have the money to pay or that the system was too confusing, I'm afraid that's not going to fly.
Now for the big one, cost. So many people are scared to challenge HMRC because they're imagining this huge legal bill if they lose. But here's the reality, and honestly, this is a game changer. For most standard cases that go to the First-tier Tribunal, the rule is simple. Each side pays their own costs, win or lose. The only time you'd really risk paying HMRC's legal fees is if your case gets officially labeled as complex, or if the tribunal thinks you've acted completely unreasonably. For most people, that fear of a massive bill just isn't realistic. It really levels the playing field.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from the shock of that first letter right through to the mechanics of the tribunal. It's a complicated world, and while you have every right to go it alone, you absolutely do not have to. Bringing in a professional tax advisor completely changes the game. They can give you strategic advice on the best route for your specific case. They live and breathe HMRC's procedures, and they will handle all those critical deadlines and all that paperwork for you. And most importantly, they know exactly how to build a strong, evidence-based case which massively boosts your chances of winning. It's about turning a stressful fight into a calm, structured process.
Now, before we finish up, we have to share a quick disclaimer. The information we've talked about here is for general guidance and educational purposes. We want to empower you with knowledge, but because every single tax situation is unique, it should not be used on its own to make financial decisions. And for that exact reason, before you make any big decisions, you really should talk to an expert. If you need professional, one-on-one help with an HMRC appeal or any other tax questions, we highly recommend you get in touch with the people who helped put this guide together, My Tax Accountant. You can call them on 0208-570-8531 or drop them an email at info@mytaxaccountant.co.uk.
So, we'll leave you with this final thought. Yes, the system can be complicated, but it is not unbreakable. You have clear legal rights and several different ways to get to a fair outcome. And as we've seen, the odds can absolutely be in your favor. The only question left is, now that you know your rights, are you prepared to use them?